Well, hello. I'm here with Doug to talk about gaslighting and many other things. It is Friday, June 27, 2025. And I guess I'll start with this. See, I watch Kyle Kalinski's political commentary. I like it a lot. And in his last one, they just had an impeachment bill for Trump. And 128 Democrats voted with the Republicans to kill it and not impeach Trump. And I'm disgusted by that, and so was he. So he just left his recording on and recorded him talking to his congressional representative. And I thought I would do that too, although I forgot to hit record, so I didn't record it. And anyway, the speaker in my phone wasn't loud enough to make a good recording anyway, but it was important what I learned. You can find your congressional representative easily and call them, which is what I did. I did not expect what they would do, although I should have after watching what happened to Kyle. I said, you guys voted to not impeach Trump. I don't agree with that. I'm out in the streets protesting every week saying we need to get rid of these Nazis running our government. And here you are collaborating with them. So I'll be supporting any primary opponent who will actually do something instead of just sit there like a lump in the log while they burn down America. And what you get from them, you talk to a real human, and they will then gaslight you. They will then tell you, oh, no, he didn't vote to prevent Trump from being impeached. He voted to have debate on the measure, and unfortunately, that measure failed. And I'm like, he did? What? I'm looking at this list, and it turns out everything is designed to be as confusing as possible. So there was a vote, and the vote actually has a name that says nothing about impeachment, but the vote had something to do with whether we could have a vote on impeachment. And he voted on the side with the Republicans to stop that. So, I mean, what they do is they spin it. They gaslight you. They try to confuse you with some double talk, saying, oh, no, I voted to debate the measure because that meant it would be tabled for now and have to come up later. That would delay it, but I don't have to admit I'm delaying it. And so that's a thing to be aware of. They will try and snow you. But the fact is,
Yeah.
they're just lying. And this is probably makes me understand much more what I heard over the last several years. Like AOC has a notepad on her door in Washington, and she can come back to her office and find a guy writing on the notepad, I support Trump, and now I support you. You guys are great. And she could explain this to me. And he said, because you people talk like a human. I can understand you. You're not just flooding me with garbage and lies like the rest of them. And man, that's what they're doing. The inert Democrats that are just sitting there watching the Nazis take over the government have these euphemisms and cover stories for their collaborating with the regime, and that's what they repeat. And the Republicans are much more organized about it. If you watch the Sunday news shows, they will ask them the question of the week, like, did we really stop the Iran nuclear program or whatever it is? And you always get exactly the same answer. And they really do have a think tank of people that have talking points and distribute them to people. It says anytime anybody asks you, give them this answer, and they will just read right off the list. And the Democrats aren't that organized, but it amounts to the same thing. They have some lame excuse why it's great to do what they're doing, and they'll just repeat it to you. So anyway, I I think that helps. I think it is recommended by many people to call your congressperson. I'm not sure there's any point when they're Nazi collaborators, but I did, and I think it may affect them eventually. But I think they're not that far from the Republicans. Republicans try to hold a town hall, and all the people are screaming and yelling at them, saying, "You're hurting me. What's wrong with you?" And I think a normal, average, inert object Democrats are finding the same thing. Like, who is it? Is it Chuck Schumer? I think it is Chuck Schumer who said, "Well, I sent Trump a strongly worded letter with 8 points criticizing this policy," as if that's going to do anything. Anyway,
Right. Yeah.
anyway, that was my big revelation this week. What do you got, Doug?
All right. So let's start with kind of a fun one here. You have an iPhone?
Of course, yes, I do.
Do you have an Apple Wallet?
I do
Do you use your Apple Wallet?
all the time. It's
Do you
really
get
convenient.
put?
In fact, I upgraded my iPhone just to get that feature.
Yeah, well, maybe you want to get rid of it now. Apple has decided to use the push notification to send out a discount code for their movie with Brad Pitt on AI, no, A1. Uh,
Well, I haven't seen that. I know there was a thing like a few years ago when the Android came with like a movie people didn't actually, a U2 song that people didn't want came automatically on there, and everyone got mad about that. It was
yeah,
filling
well,
filling up
this
their
is a
storage space.
This is another thing. Apparently, Apple is now using push notification in the wallet to send out discount movie codes.
Well, I haven't seen it, but probably my phone is too old. I've got the 10.
Maybe I didn't get it either,
Yeah.
but I wonder if they stopped. But they're now using a critical tool that a lot of people now depend on for advertising.
Well, yeah, that's rude. I know Microsoft's been doing that to us for years, like popping up ads on the desktop, popping up like when upgrade to the next version of Windows ads that do it whether you click yes or no and things like that. This is
Yeah,
a Cory Doctorow shows enshittification of the web, where everybody says, actually serving the customer is wasting money. We should harass the customer and then we can make more money.
right. Exactly. So we'll see how this goes over. Supposedly, in next version of iOS, there's a way to disable it,
Yeah.
but currently there isn't.
Well, I think Apple users are a lot less tolerant of this garbage than Microsoft users. I think Microsoft users have been beaten so much they accept just constant abuse. Apple customers
Yeah,
actually expect to be served. That's why you pay more. They cost twice as much, and then you expect good service and not to be harassed by garbage.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's
Agreed.
like it's like a luxury car. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Um, but again, this is a wallet, and you expect to be like at the gate, getting on the plane. You've got your airline tickets, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden, an ad pops up. Would you like
Yeah.
more storage?
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
no, I'm trying to get on the plane.
well, I like the wallet because I put the wallet on my wristwatch, and that's how I pay for everything. I don't even need to carry my phone or my wallet around anymore. It's really nice.
So, with the wristwatch, do you have to have your phone in
No,
close proximity?
no, you don't. It's on the wristwatch. You double click a button and you can pay for things. It's really nice.
Oh, I see.
It's
That's
really
nice.
handy. I've gotten used to it everywhere. That's why if I go anywhere and they don't take Apple Pay, I'm often screwed because I really am not carrying like cash or a credit card or anything anymore.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I haven't, I don't carry cash at all and haven't.
But these days, it seems like at least 90% of everywhere takes Apple Pay.
Yeah,
It really
yeah,
is a great app.
yeah, it really is.
And I switched to it vigorously. Actually, I upgraded my phone just for it because, of course, credit cards put the same number every time. And Apple Pay creates a one-use code that can't be replayed, so it's intrinsically much more safe to use.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why you should use Apple Pay
Yeah.
or something equivalent. Do
Well,
you, do you know
yeah.
if do you know if Google Pay or Samsung Pay does the same thing?
Um, I'm not sure about Samsung Pay because I think that sort of came and went. Google Pay supposedly is very secure if you get the expensive high-end Google phones, like the Pixel. But if you get a cheap knockoff Android phone, then it simulates the security features instead of having them in hardware, and it's not so safe.
Interesting. Okay, so Apple is intrinsically more safe.
Well, that's the way because there is
Yeah.
no cheap knockoff Apple that's inferior. All Apple
Right.
Apple, so
Right.
they all have the secure element, which is like the TPM, the safe place to put that stuff. Some of the cheaper Androids don't have it.
Got it. Got
Yeah.
it.
Anyway,
Okay.
but they're all
What
a
else
lot
you
better.
got?
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so
Yeah.
uh, RFK Jr. had his vaccine meeting, and they declared they're ending thimerosal, that preservative in vaccines, which have been proven to be harmless. And everyone is very concerned. They're now reviewing all childhood vaccines and all adult vaccines, and everyone expects them to pretty much stop that. So the thing I haven't seen yet, but I expect very soon, is vaccine tourism, where people will go to another country with their kids to get their vaccines. I think we're going to have to do that since the United States won't have them anymore. But so far, and I don't know if we're going to have flu shot this year or any future year, because that's all RFK Jr. is end all that. And he hasn't yet come out specifically to end pasteurization of milk, but that's another thing he would like to do. So we'll go back to like the 1700s level of nutrition and sanitation here. Anyway, so
Yeah. That if you know anything about vaccinations and pasteurization, you understand that the death rate diminished substantially.
yes, this is why people used to have like 12 kids because half of them would die
Right.
in infancy. I mean, it's
Right.
appalling. It's like
Right.
I think vaccines are one of the best health benefits ever provided to the human race. The only thing that is more important is clean water.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but uh, but our Republican government is anti-science and anti-truth, and they don't care. They're happy to see us all die just so they can stay popular. Um, and
So,
yeah,
Sam, is that part of Project 2025?
I don't know. I do know Trump never thought of this as part of his agenda. He tried to praise the vaccines. He wanted to take credit for the vaccines, but when he tried to do that, everyone rebelled. So the anti-vaxxers um, took over the Republican base somehow without Trump really supporting it, and then he had to go to that side to stay popular. But this is actually something the grassroots people seem to have kind of invented on themselves without it being pushed on them by politicians. I guess because they got them used to consuming so many lies otherwise. They sent them to places like Alex Jones and Rush Limbaugh. And I guess, just they spin a science fiction fantasy world where Hillary Clinton is trafficking in child sex abuse victims and stuff like that. And somehow anti-vax fits in there. Every government agency is evil. You should just shut them all down. Every authority figure, every scientist is all part of a conspiracy. I'm surprised they aren't all 4004 BC creationists. That would totally fit in, or flat earthers.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
seems, I guess they just pick whatever fantasy is currently popular and ride it. And just some sort of, I think what's happening, I've actually expected this my whole life. The United States peaked in power and relative income in the 50s, and we're an empire in decline. So there's just a general feeling that something is wrong with America. Why can't my kids get a job? Why do they have to stay at home? They just feel like the place is going to hell, and therefore they look for an explanation. And some kind of conspiracy of evil people doing this to you is a real attractive explanation, as opposed to, I think the truth, which is that we just, like every other empire, we had a peak and then we have a decline.
Yeah. Okay.
And anyway,
But wait, but ours is relatively short, isn't it, compared to other empires?
I don't know. I think it's been
No.
declining since the 60s,
Well,
meaning a
right.
long time.
So that's what, three-quarters of a century?
Yeah, how long did it take the British Empire to fall? I mean, when did the sun never set on the British Empire, and that was like up through about like 1850 or so, wasn't it?
But
So
when did it begin?
well, I don't know enough history to
Yeah.
you would
Yeah.
imagine that everything is faster now because of the internet and everything. Everything's on an accelerated timeline.
Okay, that's a
Yeah.
fair answer. I like that.
Yeah. But I
But
think
the
any,
Ottoman Empire, didn't that last 1100 years? I don't
oh
know my
yeah, and,
history,
and,
but
and you know, the Roman Empire took several centuries to fall. And
and the Chinese dynasties.
oh yeah, they went through a whole bunch of series of phases of turmoil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Anyway,
so it's our turn.
it is. I think what happened is we exploited America. We killed off the Native Americans. We stole all their stuff. Then we invaded a few other places and stole their stuff. And then after a while, we couldn't find anybody's stuff to steal anymore. So our wealth stopped increasing, which is, I think, what happens to them all. They,
Yeah.
they steal stuff for a while, then they run out of stuff to steal, and then they decline.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, of course, I'm not a political scientist. There's probably more nuance to that. But anyway,
No, there probably is, right?
yeah, I
Yeah.
imagine there's whole books and theories and everything. Anyway, so, Trump banned all visiting students for a while from foreign nations, but now they've opened it up again so people can come in from other nations, but they must hand over all their social media accounts, which will then be examined. And if they find anything on there that suggests that they have any complaints about the Trump administration, they throw them out. I just heard a couple of days ago, there was a guy that was sent back to Iceland because they demanded his phone password at the airport when he tried to come into America and said, if you don't give us your password, we're going to lock you up for 5 years for not giving us your phone password. So we gave it to them. When they looked in there, they found a meme making fun of J.D. Vance, so they kicked him out of the country and sent him back to Iceland. So South Korean and Indian students that want to study here are now scrubbing or deleting their social media and even paying people to clean off all social media before they come here. And then another entertaining fact is on May 28th, the State Department said they would deny visas to foreign officials deemed to have censored social media posts of American citizens. So, uh, anyway,
Wait, run that by me again?
yeah, they will deny visas to foreign officials if their state is so oppressive as to block
Ah,
social media.
I see. I
So I
see.
mean, it's incredibly transparent. They want Twitter to have pro-Trump Nazi content, which must percolate into other nations, but they don't want anybody else saying anything against that. That's the modern free speech, just like Elon Musk's free speech. Free speech means he can say anything you want, and if you criticize him, you get kicked off.
Well, isn't that the same uh, that some of the states have done with travel bans?
I don't know.
Remember, we were not allowed as educators to go to conferences in Texas and
Well, you know,
Florida,
I just
and
did it anyway, and nothing happened. I think all that meant was we couldn't get paid for it.
yeah, you couldn't get
Yeah,
government
state
or
funds. Yeah, state funds won't let you
yeah,
go to states they disapprove of. Yeah, it was like that. Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah, and
whatever.
yeah. So the Trump phone, Trump's latest
Oh
grift.
yeah, the
You
Trump
can okay.
phone.
The Trump
Did you
phone
did
claimed
you
that
buy one?
I did not. Somehow I missed out. So Trump produced
Oh,
the gold covered phone for $500, and it used to proudly claim the whole point of it is made in the USA. And all the people that know about phones said, "Wait a minute, that phone isn't made in the USA. It can't possibly be made in the USA." And so the website no longer says it's made in the USA. The website says it's designed with American values in mind and brought to life right here in the USA, and that there are American hands behind every device. But when Ars Technica called up the Trump Mobile, they still said they're being proudly made in America. Speculation of the contrary is simply inaccurate. But they haven't got a launch date and they haven't quite made the specifications. But, you know, like everything Trump does, it's a scam. It's a $250 Chinese phone being rebranded and sold at $500. Or it will be. They haven't really apparently chosen it yet. It's like his Trump watches. You know, he announced the Trump watches. You could get them for $100,000, except they didn't even exist yet. And they don't have a ship date. And the picture is for like illustration purposes only. I think they now have come out. I saw somebody said they bought one, but it has Trump spelled wrong. So it's what you'd expect. They just find the cheapest Chinese knockoff they can find and ship it, which is, I'm sure, what the phone is going to be. Maybe it'll be
that,
a Huawei phone or something.
yeah. Those are like the Roll Flex watches.
That's right.
Have you ever heard of a Roll Flex watch?
No, but there's, of course, I've seen tons of Chinese knockoffs.
You can get a Roll Flex watch
Yeah.
very inexpensively on the streets of New York, is what I've been told.
Yeah. And you can get Chinese knockoffs that look identical. Are very hard to tell from the real one. But
Yeah.
these sound like the lower tier ones. Yeah. And anyway,
All right.
I got a few more of these things. There's a corporate cover-up act in California. State Bill 690 is an attempt to let corporations spy on us in secret. So it will gut the Invasion of Privacy Act, a California law that prevents you from being secretly recorded or monitored. It'll legalize corporate wiretaps so they can intercept real-time clicks, calls, and communications and run registers and trap and trace tools and sell all that data to other people with zero notice or legal consequences. So we'll see if that passes. I kind of think the California government might block that. I hope so. Uh,
We'll see, won't we? Yeah.
So Trump went to NATO, a NATO meeting in Europe, and they'd have learned how to please Trump. Now, remember, Trump's original claim from his first term is they are not paying 2% of their GDP into NATO, and therefore they're a bunch of bums. Well, now he claims they need to spend 5% of their GDP, and they all said, oh, yeah, we'll get right on that. We'll do that for sure. And so Trump loves them now. But of course, they're not going to do that. They can't do that. That's insane. Most of them are in debt. Even 2% was too much. So they're going to like try and do creative accounting and like, you know, shove things around and say, oh, this is defense and somehow make it look like they're spending 5%.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got
And
it.
the FTC has, I didn't know this, Fortnite. I've never played Fortnite. Have you?
No.
Apparently, it's some game and it's really popular. I know nothing about it, but apparently they've been ripping people off. They had dark patterns on the Fortnite site that would display confusing purchase prompts, promote misleading offers, allow underage account holders to make purchases without parental consent, and charge players unintentionally by waking the game from sleep mode, or trick you when you're viewing an item into thinking you're paying for it. So now they're having to pay $126 million back to Fortnite players. Apparently, they were tricking people into paying some stuff they didn't want. So I heard it's a very popular game, but apparently he's been ripping people off all along. Anyway,
That, that's like there was a couple, a woman out of Mill Valley, California. This goes back many years. Her name was Ruth Parasol. Her and her husband at the time were worth combined as much as Bill Gates.
wow.
So combined, they were, when Bill Gates was worth $52 billion, I think they were worth about 60 billion combined. And how did they make their money?
Yeah,
Sam asks.
I do,
With,
because usually scammers aren't that successful.
well, this wasn't really a scam. It turned into a scam. So this goes back to 976 numbers where you'd call up and these were sex lines
Oh, okay.
and they would get your credit card and they were found to be overbilling. So they had to send a refund check to everybody who called or made a claim for the 976 numbers of
Right,
being overcharged. Sounds
right.
fair, right?
Yeah,
When you endorse the check, it says, I
oh,
agree to become a subscriber
yeah.
and pay $25 a month to partypoker.com.
Yeah, yeah. I used to run those programs. I'm working under contract to the FTC, and we had
Yeah.
those agreements on the check, but we would never let them say something like that. That was
Well,
a mistake to allow that.
they weren't supposed to.
Well, then you have another lawsuit after the first one to make them refund this if they do things like that. That did not happen in any of the cases I was working on, as far as I could tell. In fact, I
Yeah.
know because we were printing the checks. We knew what was on those checks, and they didn't have anything like that on there.
But she had the credit card
Yeah, yeah.
on
Well,
file. Anyway, so partypoker.com wasn't allowed to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. It was listed on a European, I think a London stock exchange, not sure the exact one. And boy, did it have growth. 10% every year consistently.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
or no, I'm sorry, not 10%, 100% growth
Yeah.
per year for about 5 years.
Well,
And kind of to end the story, what happened is the gambling consortium in the United States lobbied Congress to say, hey, you can't do online gambling anymore. And so that was the end of that.
I think there still are online gambling sites, but maybe they're overseas or something, or is it legal in
Well,
America now
it
or
it
something?
changed. It changed because originally this goes back to the mid 90s or no, mid 2000s where there was a lobbying, I don't know if you remember this, to prevent credit card purchases for online gambling.
Yeah, I think I heard about this. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was the, gaming companies getting together
But
to
these,
go after Ruth Parasol because they
yeah.
weren't prepared. Then I think they've done online gambling. And so now we've relaxed the laws and kind of her and her husband split apart. And I guess their wealth isn't that great anymore. Last time I looked, she's worth 2 billion.
Oh, that's such a shame. We should send a
So
sympathy
yeah,
card. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
there seems to be tons of online gambling. I hear ads all the time for sports betting and stuff. So I guess they've legalized it now.
yeah. Interesting story though, how you can go from enormous wealth to not facing any jail prison time and still be a billionaire.
Well, I think the president is the example of the world of how you can just run one con and run another con and do one crime and do another crime and just pay enough lawyers and get away with it for apparently forever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, she's, interesting.
Yeah.
And she lived in Mill Valley, California, as well as Gibraltar.
And yeah.
So, not sure what to say on that.
Yeah. Well, I've got some InfoSec stories.
Okay.
There's something called Scale AI, which I never heard of, but apparently it's important. They're an American company that provides data labeling and model evaluation services to help you develop AI products. And they've just been using publicly accessible Google documents for their private data. And they're working for Google, Meta, and XAI, among others. And they're just leaving all these files containing confidential information about their clients just open to the world. And so somebody found them And now they say they're conducting a thorough investigation. But what surprises me is third-party risk is not a new thing. You're supposed to manage third-party risk. You're supposed to have contracts with your contractors that specify they're going to protect the data. You even often audit them. So I'm surprised that these huge companies like Google and Meta are not managing their third-party risk better. And this is not a new problem. And apparently they're just still not paying attention to what their subcontractors are doing. Anyway,
Okay.
and here's a good one. There's a German startup that got a 10 million euro funds to turn cockroaches into AI-enabled controllable biorobots. They put a backpack on the cockroach and somehow stick like a needle in their brain and remote control them and use them as robots. And this, of course, is the way to reach like inaccessible areas of a building or something. Uh,
And so do they have cameras?
I guess so. They say backpacks enable control, sensing, and secure communication. So I guess they have cameras or something on them. And
Yeah, okay.
it seems possibly a good idea. I guess it's the cheapest way to build a robot anyway. Uh, and So there are worm GPTs now. I didn't hear about these, but apparently worm GPTs are a category of hacking tool, which are large language models that do not have any controls to stop you from writing malware and stuff on them. And people sell them online. And what they do is they track down models and that are non-censored and build them into products. But two of them now use public models, Grok and Mistral, and they just have a special prompt that jailbreaks them into ignoring their security boundaries. So it's extremely effective. And this is, of course, a fundamental issue for people to understand is all large language models are subject to command injection, which they call prompt injection, which is a really serious security flaw, and nobody seems to have any effective defense against it.
I see.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the other one I mentioned now in AI is um, HackerOne's leaderboard. I mean, I've been on HackerOne. I think a lot of people have. They have a whole bunch of people will say we offer a bug bounty, and you go and find a vulnerability on their site, and then they'll pay you, and they'll put you on the scoreboard. And the number one leader in America is now Expo, which is an AI product. So this company has to be supervised by a human, but this product finds vulnerabilities in code by scanning the code and finding, common patterns of code flaws. And apparently it does a very good job. So they found it hacked more than a dozen well-known companies, including Amazon, Walt Disney, PayPal, and Sony. And they're now the leader. So they say the algorithm is very good. And so this is a tool. So like I said, I'm saying telling everybody all along, the future is not that AIs will replace humans, but humans need to learn how to use AI tools to be employable and promotable these days. Whatever you're doing, you should find out which tools would help you on your job and use them. And apparently, pen testing is one of those things where they now have effective tools that can help you. So,
I see. I see.
have you got some?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you've been following this, but have you heard about the bionic, or I'll call it bionic, not really, but contact lenses that
Not
are coming
familiar.
out that allow people to see in the infrared?
Oh, I heard about them years ago. So
Oh, is that right?
like night vision goggles. Yeah.
Um, they're not night vision goggles,
Oh,
is my understanding. Um, they take one wavelength of light, they're wavelengths of light, and create it or what would it be? Trans frequency it. That's
yeah.
probably
Frequency
not a
doubling
word.
is what they called it when I did it.
It was called what?
Frequency doubling.
Frequency. Yeah. So it just converts infrared light into visible light range.
Yeah. Now, when I did this decades ago, it required
Yeah.
a nanosecond pulse of light because you had to have super bright light in order for the nonlinearity in a crystal to be large enough to do any frequency doubling. But I have seen some news about how there are materials now that can do frequency doubling without having super bright light. So this is not electronic, right? It's just some kind of
No.
passive lens structure. That's right. They seem to have found some lens materials that will do frequency doubling without requiring super intense pulses, because what happens is it has to be moving the electrons so much that they hit the nonlinear region and sort of clip the sine wave and turn it into square waves so it has power at double the frequency. That's how the ones I used work.
Yeah, and doesn't let me think. The mantles that used to be in kerosene lamps and in projector or in cameras have had radioactive thorium in them.
Well, I don't know
And
about that.
that that was to take one frequency of light, at least in the lamps, and intensify it.
Wow. I never heard of that. I thought
So
I thought lenses were all linear, but apparently not anymore.
no, this has been known for quite a while. This
Oh.
goes way back that Kodak and or
Hmm.
sorry, I don't know motion pictures, but I do know the lenses are moderate or slightly radioactive because they have thorium in them.
The IR lenses have thorium in them?
No, 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 no. Sorry.
Yeah.
Change topics here.
Yeah, the older one.
So in the movie industry,
Yeah.
they use thorium lenses to
Mhm.
intensify, I think, the colors
Hmm.
while they were making movies.
Well, that's interesting. I'd like to know how that works. I did a lot of optics years ago. And so these contact lenses,
Yeah.
just
So
passive,
let's,
right? There's no electronics in them,
right.
nothing.
There's no electronics whatsoever at all. And right now they're working, but the images that you see in the IR range are blurry.
Well, I would think so. Also, I would think you'd need a very intense IR light to see.
I don't know. I have not tried them,
Yeah,
but they're again passive.
yeah.
And one of the uses that they have is to help people who are colorblind.
Well, one, I'd like to understand the quantum mechanics of that, how that actually works on a
Yeah,
fundamental
yeah,
level.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, isn't that so? Don't you remember the thorium mantles that were used in kerosene lights?
No, I never heard of them.
No, Sam, really?
Nope. I never, I,
So,
and it,
so if you go to a Discovery Museum and they show you about radioactivity, those mantles, or at least the old ones, were slightly radioactive.
yeah, no, I don't know what the benefit would be. Maybe to have clearer glass.
No, no, these are the mantles, the little cloth pieces that would hold the
Oh,
kerosene
oh,
gas.
oh, the stuff that actually burns on.
Right. And
Oh,
so it would convert one wavelength, is my understanding,
oh, that
to
makes
another,
sense.
yeah, to
I
another
know you,
wavelength of
because I know
light.
you can put like different gases around a burning thing and get different colors because the gases fluoresce different colors. So sure, changing the chemical composition of the wick will change the wavelength of the light that comes out.
Yeah. And so it'd be interesting to see how
Yeah.
somebody ever thought of doing this. But anyway, they do.
Oh yeah.
They
Well, when I
did.
when I took chemistry and physics years ago, this was a common way to identify compounds was to put them in a flame and see what color comes out. It was just in the chart, one of the basic tests. Sodium is yellow and so on.
Yeah, but it's my understanding the reason that it's used in a lens as well as in the mantles, the
Yeah.
cloth mantles in a kerosene lamp, is that it intensifies the light of certain frequencies. So if
Yeah.
you've ever seen a kerosene lamp, that mantle glows incredibly bright.
Hmm. Okay. We actually had them and used them, but I never noticed that. Main
Okay,
thing I
but
noticed is the soot builds up on the glass, so it actually dims out the light.
that's not supposed to happen.
We call them
Anyway,
hurricane lanterns. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, okay.
Well,
The other one I'll bring up is the AI ruling. Have you been following this
no.
about the creation of the large language models?
Ruling? You mean a law or something?
Yeah, so the A1 ruling, I'm making a joke there,
Yeah, yeah.
but it was brought to get it was I got to think the claim has been made that all the documents that are out there should not be ingested into AI to create uh, um, um,
Because of copyright infringement?
yeah, because of
Oh, yeah,
copyright
I know about that.
infringement
There's
things.
huge lawsuits going around. Yeah.
Yeah. So the ruling is, I think, right now, or at least the thought process, is that these are little snippets of code. It's not the entire, even though the entire document is being read in, or documents are being read in, since only little snippets are being used, it falls under fair use.
Right, that's the issue. But now they
Yeah.
found that recent models can cough up like half of a whole Harry Potter novel. So they're clearly trained on a lot more than just little snippets. They're basically memorizing the whole document and reproducing it, which is going to go against them in court, I think.
Yeah, but I think the ruling is right now, or at least the thought of the courts right now, is that these are little snippets, so it is
Yeah.
permissible.
No, I saw a ruling that said that what one of the big models did, they said they did two things. First, they pirated all the books in the world at a pirate site, and then they trained on them. And they said training on them was not a violation of the law, but pirating them in the first place was. And they said something that bothered me. They said, even if you go and pirate a book online and then buy a copy of the book, that doesn't mean you didn't break the law, which is irritating because I've done that. I've torrented things because it was the only way to get the version I needed, and then bought it separately and figured they said we'll lower the damages anyway. That's but yeah, that court ruling, for what it's worth, does suggest that the AI companies can get away with what they're doing, but I'm sure it will be appealed and have to go higher.
Yeah, yeah. So this
This is a
story isn't over yet.
No, this is a huge amount of money at stake. This is like the tobacco lawsuits or the people that sue gun manufacturers for gun deaths. This is a huge issue that could have a huge payout.
Yeah. In the meantime, a little side note here is Nvidia stock price continues to climb. And over the past 3 months, I think it's increased by 35%.
But now it's coming down or is it still going up?
No, it's still going down. I'm looking
Wait, is it going down
since,
or up? You said it increased by 30%.
yeah, no, sorry, going up.
Still going up. Okay.
So
I wonder.
let's see, let me look over the past 6 months, or let's say over the past year,
Yeah.
the low was at 98 and now it's at 158.
Yeah, well, I think Elon Musk is building another data center with another 100,000 of those GPUs or something. There's just a huge demand for them. The demand is still growing. So I'd expect that stock to keep going up until demand falls.
Yeah, yeah. So, it's interesting the Chinese blip in the bubble caused their stock to tank, or maybe that was,
Yeah,
uh,
DeepSeek heard it for a while anyway, because DeepSeek
yeah,
suggested that you don't actually need those things. But people seem to have gone back to the big iron model for AI.
yeah, right, right, right.
Yeah.
The other time it peaked was right after the election.
Right. I think people correctly expecting the Trump administration to remove all the regulations on AI and just let it grow without limit, which is certainly what happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so,
All right.
so I
Well,
got a,
that's it for me this round. Do you have another
oh
story
yeah,
for us?
I got several other technical ones sort of. So
Okay.
Pornhub did introduce government approved age checks in the UK. So I guess we're going to find out how that works. This has been a big issue, of course, going back and forth. But the parent company says they are bringing in government approved age assurance methods, but they have not yet revealed how they're going to do it. So it'll be interesting to watch what happens in Britain because, of course, a lot of people want to do this in the USA, but there are huge arguments about how do you do this and how does it work. We're going to see. Um, there's a student that hacked Western Sydney University in Australia.
Wait.
Yeah,
Let's back up here a little
yeah,
second.
yeah.
I wonder do you know who currently, I'm sure you don't, but owns Pornhub?
ALO, apparently, AYLO.
AYLO.
Yeah.
Um,
And
oh, ALO Holdings.
remember they tried to do this in America, and Pornhub actually blocked Tennessee and a few other states, saying we will just deny your state service rather than try to do age verification because age verification is horrible and we don't know how to do it and it won't work. But in Europe, they're doing it. So this is like all other internet regulations. In America, they say it's impossible. In Europe, they demand it, so people do it in Europe.
Yeah, so the reason I bring this up is because Pornhub was in the midst of a massive class action lawsuit, and they were being sued by a number of women.
Yeah.
and they had to remove, I think, 80% of their content. And what's interesting is there was I think, an Austrian who was behind it. And he was the one that originally created Pornhub and then sold it or was part owner. And there's some New York investment companies that were part owner of Pornhub.
Yeah.
And when the lawsuits came about, he actually flipped and provided testimony or provided information so the lawsuit could continue. You ready for this, Sam? So then he could buy Pornhub back
Oh, yeah.
at pennies on the dollar,
Yeah, this is a pretty
essentially.
common trick. You create a scandal in order to lower the price. There are people that argue that this is what Elon Musk was doing with Twitter, was defaming it so the price would fall.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that one
Then
worked because
he was forced to,
to
because he'd put in writing that he would pay
uh
54.40 or 50. They said, well, you really have to pay that, even though it was only worth half that at the time.
yeah. So I'm just looking here. There's a website called um I guess it's Courthouse News Service. This is when was this story? March 7th, 2025. Pornhub, Pornhub owners asked judge to dismiss child sex trafficking lawsuits. And that's plural.
Yeah.
So this is still going on. This is down in Los Angeles, it looks like.
That's another huge one. Ton of money at stake.
Yeah, yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of money. And if I recall correctly, Pornhub was the third most visited website on the internet.
Yeah, something like that. That's why these
Yeah.
are huge issues, just like tobacco and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, this is big business.
Yeah. And a pretty nasty business with a whole lot of legal problems. So,
Yeah,
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 like tobacco.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, well, I
yeah.
should mention a couple more of these. There's a thing called Screen Connect, which is some kind of remote administration tool, and hackers, you can make a custom install that includes the name of your server to connect to or something. And it turns out hackers can make a piece of malware this way. And the interesting thing is it uses a process called authentic code stuffing. And this is something I noticed in one of my projects in my malware analysis class. You can have signed code and you can modify the code and the signature is still valid because the signature in Windows apps does not really apply to the entire thing. It only
Yeah.
signs certain segments, and it turns out that part of the area that is not signed includes like the remote server to connect to, what text is shown in the dialog boxes, and logos that can be displayed. So that without violating the signature, they make a modified product that shows you like the blue screen of death and says, "Oh, you have to do these steps to like recover your machine or something." It's I don't understand any of this. The whole point of digital signatures is to make sure you can't modify it, but then you can modify it. So what was the point of that?
Well, you can't modify all of it. You just
That's right.
can't modify some of it.
Well, yeah, then they better make sure that the part you can modify is not very important, and that is not happening apparently. Really important things are in that modifiable portion.
Yeah. So I'm looking here, Screen Connect, that's been
Yeah,
around for a long time.
yeah,
It's used by support technicians to remotely assist.
yeah,
And it's now called ConnectWise Screen Connect.
yep. And this
So,
is like there's a bunch of them. There was
yeah.
PC Anywhere and a whole bunch of these things. Anyway, so here's
Yeah.
one that should improve the world. Microsoft is removing antivirus products from the kernel, which has been something they've wanted to do for a really long time. Remember, they wanted to do this for Vista, but now they're trying to push everything out. So because of CrowdStrike, the CrowdStrike instance, since the antivirus was running in the kernel, when CrowdStrike had a bad update, it killed the Windows machines dead all over the world, and that was bad. So really, that stuff should never have been in the kernel anyway, and Microsoft is trying to push it out. However, the other thing that they haven't been able to do yet is push anti-cheat software for games out of the kernel. And they say that might have to stay in the kernel. There might be no way to have an effective anti-cheat product that doesn't live in the kernel. So what that might do is, might cause more people to refuse to let people install games on their important machine, which would make sense to me. The games are a security risk. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
also, Microsoft is redesigning the blue screen of death. It will now be black. So it's the black screen of death. So
Well, and I think they have a red screen of death.
in Vista, they made like green and red versions, but that didn't last long. Now it's
That
back to
didn't,
blue.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And
Well, that's an important feature. I'll tell you, I want that.
I remember back when they said Microsoft is going to put ads on the blue screen of death, and that was a pretty funny idea in the days of Windows
Yeah.
XP. That turned out not to be true, but it would be pretty funny. Um, and let's see what else is worth mentioning here. We've mentioned those. I think I'll just mention this last one. I didn't know this. I saw a report where someone said, I think when I had Pulse Security Weekly, they said, if you want to have secure products, just make sure they come from California because California has banned default passwords. And apparently this happened in 2018. They passed a law in California effective in 2020 that no product made here can have default passwords like admin and password. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. So what's it supposed to,
It
what do
has
you
to,
have?
it has to uniquely generate a password. It can't just ship with a default password and tell you to change it. Like, routers. If you buy a router now, they don't have a default password. They have a label on it. Your password is like 10 random letters.
Oh, they're using like the MAC address.
Well, some of them are. Hopefully they're not. But yes, some of them are. In fact, there was a security vulnerability where somebody was using something like the MAC address to calculate the password, and therefore you can make a tool to reverse engineer that. What they're supposed to have is just a random password that's printed on the label or somehow communicated to you. But anyway, or another thing you can do is you can just force the user to choose a password on first boot up.
Yeah, but hold on a second. If you force somebody, or if each device has a unique password,
Right.
what do you do when you factory reset?
It factory resets back to that password, and the password's in a label on the bottom.
Ah, okay. Okay.
Yep.
And which, the easiest way to do that is make it the MAC address.
Well, yes, but of course, then people can easily detect it and steal it, and people did that for a while. That was a vulnerability. It really ought to be unconnected to anything you can find out.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, what it should be is the MAC address because that's going to be unique. It's on the label
Yeah, but
anyway.
anybody can sniff your
Oh,
network with Wireshark and find
no,
it.
no, no, no. Hold it. And require upon boot up a password change.
Well, all right, that's the same as having, if it requires you, that's the same as having no password, and it requires you during setup to choose a password. Anyway, that's the
Yeah,
point.
okay.
Yeah.
But then that's not a unique password. No password is not unique.
Well, but no, you cannot get into it. You can't use it before you set a password. That's the idea.
Okay, okay, okay,
That's what we
okay.
do. Yeah.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Anyway,
that's only for products manufactured in California.
yes, apparently so. So that's why I
Okay.
said just get things that were made in California and you won't have that problem. So
There we go. All right.
yeah, yeah. Yep. And this is what we've been talking about for decades, that there could be some kind of label on your product saying this product is secure, and then people might pay more for it, like Dolphin Safe Tuna. We've been talking about this for decades. We never really got there. But it would seem like you could just, not have the top 10 vulnerabilities and then have some kind of sticker to assert that and charge an extra $10. But we've never gotten there.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, Germany did it for a while. They had like a secure sticker with a QR code that would specify the tests and stuff. But America's never got it working. They've been talking about this forever, cyber UL listing.
Well, you could have like Intel inside, right? Something like that. A
That
little
they've had.
sticker.
Yeah, and you could have some kind of like government approval, like UL listing is one thing, or some kind of third-party independent agency that audits it. Like there's the Gold Star Energy Safe Energy, preserving
Audit thing.
compliance.
Yeah.
You can have some kind of thing like that, but somehow none of it's ever happened. And so the end users, I there's a product called Run Zero that I've started using and adding to my classes, which is discovery of all your devices. Because H.D. Moore moved to this company and he said, when we do pen tests, So all you have to do is hack into the old device people forgot is on the network. And every time we go back, there's still some old device they forgot is on the network. People don't even know what they have. So he made
Yeah.
a scanner, run zero, that will really vigorously find all your devices. And the free version will scan up to 100 devices. If you want more than 100, you have to send them an email and get permission to scan more than 100. And people tell me in their home, they have like 88 devices now because every light bulb has an IP address, all their thermostat, their car. It's getting to where you really have 100 devices on the network in your home.
Yeah. Yeah. It is true. It is true.
Well, not me, because I guess I'm a Luddite. I got no smart anything. But apparently, people really, that's getting way out of control. And therefore, all most of those devices probably have terrible security postures. And it would be better if you could somehow have some kind of rating and say, I'm getting the secure light bulb, the secure thermostat, the secure toy for my kid. Each one of those is a gateway into your network.
Yeah, but the Sam, the problem with that is it's unknown vulnerabilities.
Well, yeah, but you would think that, but I mean, most attacks just use the simple top 10 vulnerabilities, default password, code injection, SQL injection. It would be nice to know it doesn't have that.
Yeah, well, let me tell you something that I bought years ago that I would buy again, and you'll think this is silly, is a Siri or no, a Alexa enabled microwave oven.
Wow, so you can talk to your oven and tell it to,
Yeah,
is
and
that
I gotta tell you, Sam, that is the greatest thing ever.
really?
Why?
Yes, why?
Because if you look at most microwave ovens, they use an 8 or 10 point font to tell you, other than the numbers, like add 30 seconds or, cook, whatever the menu items are usually the plastic where the buttons are black. So you can't really see, you can't read
Oh,
what's on there. And
okay.
they use a light brown or a gold font,
Okay.
colored font that's maybe about 10 point, and I can't read it.
Yeah, well, this is an issue, especially as you get older, is you can't read the tiny little font on things. That's an issue, yeah. So voice control
Well,
is
wait,
around that.
wait. Even I got to go up to it with a flashlight so I can
Yeah.
read it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the Alexa is enabled, and I will tell you, I bought an iPod years ago from Apple. I called them for support, and they wanted me to read the serial number on the back.
yeah.
Now, my eyesight
Yeah.
back then wasn't that bad, but they used 8 point font with a light gray
Yeah. Yeah.
colored, you know, um, color for the font, and it was on kind of that silvery-ish.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, I could not read it. And
Yeah.
and I remember this. I was at LA airport, and I asked a couple people around me if they could read it.
Yeah.
What idiot would come up with that?
This happens all the time. What I often have to do is take a photograph with my phone and then zoom in.
Yeah, well, that wasn't possible then. This is,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but it's still like that. Who designs this stuff?
They just want to make the label as cheap as possible. So they make a small
Wait,
label.
why can't you make the font bigger? There's lots of real estate on there. Why
I
can't
don't
they
know.
backlight it with an LED or sidelight it with an
I know.
LED?
I know. Yep. This is yep. Like I said, I mentioned before, I can't handle the multi-touch gestures on the Apple trackpad. And
Yeah,
uh, and there's a whole lot of things where I have to dumb them down for my clumsy fingers. Yeah, this is, yeah, one thing about getting old, I'm a clumsy oaf, and devices are designed by like small people that are 20 years old that are dexterous and have good vision, and they think it's easy, and it's not easy for me. So, that's why
yeah,
they have the AARP phone. I mentioned before, the special phone that is simple and easy to use.
yeah. But you can't get an iPhone
No,
AARP
no,
phone.
it's a cheap Android phone, but it has pre-installed like 4 apps and nice big buttons you can see to like read email, view pictures,
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that.
I
So
get
it
it.
really serves the purpose for old people that really don't want your complicated, baffling technology.
Could we call that the Trump phone?
Well, if it actually was easy to use, that would be a valuable feature. And we'll see.
Yeah,
But I imagine it's not going to have any value other than Trump branding. But if it was easy to use, that would be a valuable thing.
yeah, agreed. All right.
Anyway, I
Do you
think
have more stories?
that's enough for today.
That's enough for today.
Okay.
Okay.
Have another one on Tuesday.
All right. Sounds good.